This video is a film study look at the flawless 2-minute drill that Jared Goff and the Lions offense dropped on the Chicago Bears Sunday in Week 2 to take a 28-14 lead at the half. The offense was really rolling at that point, perhaps getting that touchdown. Maybe some would say it didn't matter since they dropped 50-plus points overall, but I think it was key because if I remember correct, Chicago got the ball to start the third quarter, so it was important to at least get a field goal on this possession. We're going to go through as many of these plays as possible. Perhaps we'll skip the spike that Jared Goff has inside of 10 seconds. We'll certainly focus on Isaac Tesla's one-handed catch, another one. At this point, it makes you wonder if he's going to go 3 for 3 and give us another one next week on the road against Baltimore on Monday Night Football, a game that I'll certainly cover in detail in terms of previews and then post-game reaction. St. Brown's fade out for a touchdown is just one of the most beautiful situations that you'll see inside of 5 seconds left in the half. I think the ball is snapped when there's 4 seconds left. Perhaps I could be wrong there. Feel free to correct me in the comment section. Let's get the film started a little bit here, and we'll go through pretty much each individual play, except for that spike and I think one innocuous completion to St. Brown. So I'll try to color code this as much as possible, keep the running backs in yellow. It's getting difficult. I only have 4 colors available. So the Bears had a lot to say after some of these completions in a 2-minute drill. Just I think gives you an indication of the lack of focus, to be honest, at times that there is in Chicago. 1st and 10, about 1:51 left. This safety is going to be the guy who makes the tackle, kind of a zig route, whatever you want to call it, choice route for Gibbs up to the top side of the field into the boundary. Chicago elected to play pretty much their dime the whole time, and in my opinion, that if you don't know what that means there's one actual inside linebacker on the field. In this case, it's Edmonds, and I felt like Goff and Morton had a really good handle on how to attack the dime in between the Mike linebacker and the nickel, who's normally set to the field, and the dime, who's normally set to the boundary. In my opinion, Goff goes over here back to the backside to Gibbs so quickly because he sees the Mike push to the field. Basically, the Mike was pushing to the 3-receiver side as much as possible. So there's 3 receivers here, only 2 there. In my opinion, if for whatever reason, let's say that this Mike linebacker moved into the boundary, then I think Goff is probably coming back here to St. Brown. Actually, St. Brown's kind of checking that route up, if you will, on one of the landmarks or in the area of one of the landmarks for the Lions offense for the last 2 or 3 years. Basically, near the hash, in between the hash and the top of the numbers. A lot of spread teams or throwing teams have landmarks, different landmarks. It is a great tackle by the safety, don't get me wrong, but I just felt like Chicago just had so much to say after some of these plays that were completions where Goff is just shredding them and moving down the field. Another landmark route. This time it's St. Brown. I think this is the key play on this drive, in my opinion. This is the completion to LaPorta when Goff kind of has to slide to the left and find LaPorta, who's moving into the middle of the field. There is something interesting that happens here initially. So Goff is looking to the downside of our screen, the right-hand side of Detroit's offense. And both of these guys, LaPorta and Williams, really get in the same lane. I'm not saying there's no concepts where receivers kind of both go through the same area, but in my opinion, this looks like there's something wrong. Goff is looking here, I think trying to get the ball, quick completion, perhaps get it out of bounds so they can preserve timeouts. Comes back, and you do have the option maybe of St. Brown in the middle of the field. I'm not saying that's where Goff should throw it, just that that's the progression, the way that it looked to me from the way the routes were designed. And then there's pressure on Goff. He actually gets hit, and I'll give you the end zone angle. He gets hit after the play, or just after the throw. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Finds LaPorta in the middle of the field. A cool play that I don't know, how it turns out. If you get an incompletion there, then you're not dead on arrival in terms of the possession, the drive. But this was huge to be able to get. Well, you got a first down. Didn't waste a timeout. Didn't give up a sack. And didn't throw an incompletion. I guess that would be a draw, right? This ends up being an absolute win. So here's St. Brown coming across one of the I think I need to do a video at some point, probably later in the week, on landmarks for what I think are landmarks for the Lions offense. It's different for different offenses. So Goff is getting close to pulling the pin to throw the football here. Remember, Williams and LaPorta are off screen to our right. They're set to the trip side. And then he kind of shifts around to the left. He's going to take a shot. Like I said, this is a really sick play. I love the angle of him throwing this to LaPorta, especially given that Goff takes such a big shot after the play and ends up on the ground. It's a gain of 10 yards. Like I said, we know that Goff doesn't have a ton of mobility, but for him to make that happen when it could have been a sack, could have been an incompletion, perhaps or worse, I think was an important play to get down the field. This gives you a good example of, in terms of pre-snap alignment, of what I'm talking about. There's the Mike linebacker. The nickel is down here, and that's the dime. I think that's Biard. Too high safety look for the Bears, and in my opinion, I think Goff and Morton just had a really great idea on how to attack this. Compare this to the completion to Gibbs a little bit later. And so what I mean is with Gibbs pushing to the boundary, watch where the Mike linebacker Edmonds goes. So immediately, his eyes look to his right, the top side of our screen, and I think it's because Gibbs released to that side. That becomes the 3 receiver side, whereas down here, you've only got 2. Hopefully I said that in a way that makes sense. But the point is, because of where the 3 receiver side is, Goff knows that down here, he's probably got a great option for this shake slant to St. Brown's. He's able to cross the nickel's face. And the footwork, man, I mean, when St. Brown puts his foot in the ground, he's gone. There's very little wasted motion, very little wasted energy for St. Brown. He kind of reminds me of Captain America. You can pretty much do this all day. That space between the Mike linebacker and the dime or the nickel, depending on where Goff was going, it seemed to be where the Lions wanted to attack, at least on this drive, in terms of where the void was. I think there's less than 1 minute here on the snap. 53 seconds left to be precise. Oh, by the way, I should have explained this earlier. Generally, this is, the boundary or the hash, so the short side of the field, the boundary is down here, and the field side is above it, the wider side of the field. The NFL, of course, has really tight hashes. I think they're 18 feet 3 inches apart or 18 feet 6 inches apart, something like that. So certainly tighter than college and obviously high school. Mug look by the Bears since Detroit has crossed midfield. I think Tesla is just, wheel clear out here. Basically, we've got a flood concept, if you ask me. And I credit to St. Brown. He's oftentimes the guy who benefits from shield routes. And I think this is a shield route. So you've got droppers underneath for the guys who lined up at the line of scrimmage. And Goff is clearly looking in that direction. This is going to be LaPorta kind of sitting down. And I think that, first of all, it's a quick decision and throw. Why? Because Goff knew what was going to happen. Basically, St. Brown's going to shield that nickel defender and enforce that nickel to stay to the inside, such that the nickel, cannot get to LaPorta. There's really just no way for him to get there. The other guy who theoretically could get there is the corner, and I think he's being held by this wheel route from Tesla. But the corner is breaking on it, but he's breaking late. He doesn't know that if Tesla's going to run it out, and since he's responsible for the flat, he being that corner, he would be all over that route, or at least he would be tasked with it. It only ends up being a 7-yard completion. I think this illustrates Morton and Goff's confidence in that they're willing to design a play that gets them, 7, 8, 9 yards in this 2-minute situation. I think they had 2 timeouts, but I could be wrong. 38 seconds left on the snap here. I do not think they called timeout after that 7-yard completion to LaPorta. So they're going to get man coverage, and this is a really nice play by the nickel defender down here against St. Brown. You've got a high-low concept. Jamison Williams releasing to the inside and then kind of bending his route back towards the sideline. I think Morton and Goff are trying to stop the clock here. Goff is looking down here immediately to St. Brown, and so is the safety who's dropping down, meaning dropping down here, and then Brisker dropping to center field. Doesn't have anything to do really with where this ball goes, but just trying to pick up the first down, I think, from a Detroit standpoint and stop the clock. It doesn't happen. That's Dan Campbell. You can, I think, just barely see his hat there, who's going to quickly call timeout once St. Brown is tackled inbounds. Like I said, I thought the nickel DB made a really nice play on that. It's 2nd and 3, ends up being a 2-yard gain, creates a 3rd and 1. Detroit has to call a timeout, I believe, with 32 seconds left. If my timestamps are wrong, my apologies. Hopefully they're not off by too much. This is a running back cheat play under center in a 2-minute drill. So really cool. The confidence that Detroit has, first of all, in Goff, and then also in Bates to be able to make long field goals. I know he missed a field goal the other day. I think give them a wider net of options in these 2-minute situations. This is a really ugly annotation here. My apologies for that. We're basically talking about LaPorta, okay? So as the running back, let me get that out of the way. As the running back moves down into the boundary on a cheat play, okay? So fast flow. The running back is going in that direction, it's Gibbs immediately, okay? And in addition to that, you're going to get a block down by LaPorta, and then he'll be a late option there. Let's bring this route back from St. Brown. He would additionally be a late route, but I think St. Brown knows. He's super aware. He knows that, he's not going to get the football here. The defensive end is left unblocked, but he's got a lot of conflict, right? Old school 3-4, don't let the running back cross your face. That defensive end, might have been going with him, going with Gibbs. He's also got LaPorta sitting down. Now he's out of his field of vision and his worry. And then a hide concept by what I would call the H receiver, H hide, being St. Brown, underneath of him. So there's a lot going on from the standpoint of that defensive end. He's getting upfield. Goff is throwing the football quickly, even though it didn't occur quickly because I manually stop things or automatically stop things. So it's a cheat play with the running back and the quarterback full flow in the same direction. I call it a cheat play because it really puts this guy in extreme conflict. Do you deal with the running back? Do you go after the quarterback, which is what he does? They end up picking up the first down with, I think, 25 seconds left. Of course, the big play is the one that's next, the one that I'm quite sure got the home crowd extremely excited, and including you, as a Lions fan. That's Tesla's one-handed catch. I'm wondering what he does for an encore. Well, I guess this was the encore, right? How does he live up to that for the third week in a row? More snaps and hopefully more opportunities against the Ravens. It's going to be a fun week for me to try to get previews out, some of which will not include film, to be honest with you. It's a tremendous amount of effort for people creating content now to get those videos to go through the YouTube checks. So if you, whether it's a Ravens content creator this week or a Lions content creator, try to support them as much as possible, because YouTube in the NFL is really like a Gestapo pair of twins in terms of how they're cracking down on people. But I digress. All right, so like I said, 25 seconds left. This is really a slot fade-ish route from Tesla because he's lined up in the slot. But LaPorta's going to motion down, and so he really kind of becomes the number one as LaPorta gets to the inside ever so slightly. Basically a stacked twins. And I think Goff knows where he's going with this football, but especially after, and you can see for a moment he's looking here. He's just trying to see what the safeties are doing, in my opinion. And since this safety is dropping down, and again, I think it's Brisker dropping back, then Goff knows where he's going to go with the football. And of course, we know that it's Tesla. It appears as if he's a guy who doesn't need to win on the release, and he can still win on the back end. Huge asset because of his size and then ability to make one-handed tackles. There's also a quick win by the defensive tackle for Chicago. He beats Ratledge, in fact, to get to Goff. And I'll give you the end zone angle so you can see what I'm talking about. Trying to spot shadow this live, so I recognize there's some margin for error there. If it's really crappy on your end, then feel free to let me know. But the idea is that you focus on Tesla making the catch and then somehow getting his body inbounds. You can see it quite clearly there. 720p in terms of my resolution, so I understand that's not 1080. It's not perfectly clear. He's just a baller. I mean, I guess he's been doing things like that on the regular for Goff and Morton in practice and training camp because, the trust to go to him in this moment against Stevenson. Stevenson, even though he gave up some catches, a number of catches in this game, in fact, he's a talented football player. And Tesla, to be given that opportunity against him just speaks to how much they trust him. According to the timestamps, only 4 seconds elapsed here. So that's interesting. This defensive tackle gets a win against Ratledge. And he's the guy that gets the QB hit. So it's kind of like a slap with the right hand and then a rip with the outside hand. Since he's cleared, we're talking about the left hand, inside hand there, or outside hand, of the defensive tackle. I think it's Jarrett or Garrett, but hits Goff just after the throw. They get a beautiful finish from Tesla. The crowd, I love these views from the end zone angle because you kind of see the crowd a little bit tighter or more clearer, I guess, than you do from the all-22 angle. And you see just how excited, a Detroit guy or Michigan area guy, first of all, and then drafted by his favorite team to make 2 one-handed catches in the first 2 weeks. I'm sure the home energy was deafening. Really, the game is still in doubt at that point, right? Detroit's offense is rolling. Goff, I think, has a great beat or an idea on how to attack the Bears' defense in each situation. But it's 21-14 at the time that catch occurred. And like I said, I think that only 4 seconds elapsed on the throw, but I could be wrong. The fade out to St. Brown. I really actually covered this in another video sequence. I did a film study video on St. Brown on Monday. If you haven't checked that out, please consider doing so once this one finishes. The fade out is it's a cool route. You know, you got a fade, and I don't have a lot of room to draw here. And then you basically turn it into a fade and then an out. You know, the DB, he doesn't know what you're running, right? It could be a fade. It could be a China in or a whip route, right? It could be a fade out like we just talked about. And St. Brown's capable of catching those, even though he's a smaller guy. As an aside, I thought that Chicago did a really nice job up here handling this. They drop a defensive end. And that defensive end kind of collisions or is collisioned by Tesla. When I first saw this on the replay, I thought maybe that was a pick, and then LaPorta was going to flash out into the flats. But Goff's not looking there anyway. That's not the point. This is a great route. For him to win by that much is pretty unusual, if you ask me, to win by that much on that route. And when you get to end zone angle, you'll see what I mean. It's the footwork for me for St. Brown. Well, the catchability, and when I say that, I mean he catches it clean. One of the other touchdowns later on the other end of the field, for him to be able to catch it as clean as he did, as quick as he did, basically he never catches it twice. Very rarely. He catches it one time and that's it. Fade out is an old man's route, if you will. And St. Brown, to a certain extent, kind of reminds me of like old school basketball players. If you were a big basketball player or pickup out on the street or what have you, he reminds me of the guy that everybody wants on his team because, you know, he always ends up with 5 or 6 points and 2 or 3 assists every game and just stays on the court. You never get rid of him. Here's the separation that I was talking about. I just think that St. Brown continues to be amazing. We take him for granted. I take him for granted. I'm sure you probably do. The fade out and then coming back to the football is important. Not taking his route, flat to the sideline, basically cutting the corner, cutting the angle really back down towards the pylon. So he has to sell the actual fade. He has to sell that he's going to go to the back pylon enough to give him enough space to bring it back to the near side pylon, the goal line, and not end up in the field of play. Hopefully I explained all that in a way that makes sense. It was a great moment for St. Brown. It was a great moment for Goff and for John Morton, responding to how they struggled last week against the Packers. I know the Packers are on a roll, but there'll be a rematch there. I also like that the Lions are just playing football on this drive. Bears defenders, it's a 2-minute situation. They're just constantly talking to Detroit players after the catch. And I get it. People are going to say, Coach, they're competing. Hey, I've been there. I've been that guy that's been thrown out of games for talking too much. But this is a big situation, and I feel like Goff and the Lions, at least in that moment, that 2-minute drill, had tremendous composure. And the Bears did not. I'm not sure what that means. I don't know what that means about their coaching staff. I'm not trying to make large-scale statements. Just observing what I saw was a team that was mission-oriented, on task, focused on the goal, scoring a touchdown. And the Bears seemed to be focused on scoring verbal points. Goff was 23 of 28 passing, I think 337 or maybe 334 overall in terms of yards, 5 touchdowns, not sacked once. I do have a video, hopefully for Wednesday, to focus on the offensive line. At the same time that efficiency occurs, Detroit runs for 177. I think Gibbs has 94 at like almost 8 yards per carry, but he did have one of those runs for 42 yards. So he had another 11 carries for like 52 yards, still almost 5 yards per pop. I do have a video on Jamison Williams and or Hutchinson coming out tonight. At this point, tell me which one you'd like to see. First, I know Williams only had 2 catches. One of them was for 64 yards on 4 targets. Morton, I thought, had the offense ready. This drive is a perfect example of how prepared they were as players and then the level of play calling that you got in terms of the situational awareness all the way around. You guys who've listened to my content and listened and watched it for a long time know I think Goff oftentimes has 2 or maybe even 3 play calls in the huddle and has a way to communicate things efficiently and quickly that doesn't always give things away. Basically, Morton can call a play and know that Goff will still get us in a positive look to basically get us at minimum, at worst, as a floor, a draw on some of these 2-minute plays. I did a video on St. Brown on Monday, like I said earlier. If you want to, please check it out. I really only focus on the first half targets that he was given, and then, of course, the fade-out touchdown that I just talked about. I share some stuff on my Lions Discord/Patreon during the week as well. So if you guys have ever thought about supporting me outside of YouTube, I do have a Patreon link in the description. I think it's $4.99 a month. You get access to a Lions community Discord that's secure and doesn't involve trolls or anyone there who's not supportive of the Lions and a fan in general. In any case, if you enjoyed the video, please let me know in the comments section, number one. Number two, please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it somewhere out on social media to help this content get more reach. Appreciate you guys' time.